Hi everyone and welcome to the weekly podcast here on Saturn Secrets. This is the astrology for the week commencing the 25th of January 2021 and lasting up until the 31st of January. We are done with January, the most intense month of 2021 astrologically speaking. So there is a bit of a going out with a bang feeling with this particular week because we do have a rather dramatic and intense Leo full moon, but we also have Neptune squaring the true node exactly on the 26th of January. And to end the week, Mercury goes retrograde. Now you're probably already feeling this. Shadow can sometimes feel just as intense. That's why a lot of us take it on board. And you'll probably be already experiencing some themes of what you need to reevaluate and reassess in terms of your future. So let's start with the first aspect we have this week on the 25th, which is the Sun sextiling Chiron. Now, this is, of course, a beautiful healing energy. Anything with Chiron that is positive typically has an association with feelings and healing those feelings. So this relationship is an interesting one when we have the Sun, which is very much the face we put out to the public, and then we have Chiron. We're mixing in a little bit of wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, wanting to be respected, and wanting to be viewed and seen for who we are, but also having an awkwardness attached to it. It kind of reminds me of when you go on camera for the first time. I always remember my first experience doing a video for YouTube for the first time and thinking, ugh. And sometimes I still think, ugh. But this is that awkward feeling. This is putting your face forward, but having a little bit of uncertainty attached to it and feeling into what that is. Because of the aspect with the Sun, we think of the ego, and the ego is sometimes associated very much with our wounds, very much with our traumas. And with the Sun and Chiron in the mix, this can be a wound of the heart, the ego, and how open we feel to life, how vulnerable we feel about life, and how our vulnerability or our fear is impacting how we go about our business and how we put ourselves out there. There's a lot of strangeness about this aspect because the two are contradicting. And so it is in some way, particularly because Chiron's in Aries, it is in some way of getting into the wound of how we feel about our identity. Who are we? Why are we the way we are? And how do we define ourselves? I was actually having a conversation with a friend earlier about something similar and about how we can sometimes wrap ourselves up in our careers. And at the same time, there is a Venus-Pluto conjunction happening in Capricorn, which is to do with careers. And I'll talk about that in a second. But sometimes we put our identity into our career and we forget that we were who we were before we did what we did, before we do what we do. We are always ourselves. And so sometimes we can put this false security on ourselves by having a label, and that's what the ego is. So with this aspect at the beginning of the week, there can be a consideration about who we are and how comfortable we feel with it and what we're putting out and what we're hiding away and even shying away from. And then the next day, there is that murkiness, the murkiest murkiness. Neptune square the true node. We've been feeling this build up for months and we've seen it play out in the most fascinating way. Neptune is the planet associated with illusion, and the true node is the truth. And interestingly enough, the true node is in Gemini, which rules facts, it rules the media, it rules social media now, because social media is in the present, it's no longer in the future. So it's not 11th house terrain, it's actually 3rd that we associate with Gemini, and it's clashing with the planet of illusion. And so our facts have been skewed. The information we've had has been skewed. And this is all leading back to the summer when the nodes moved into the mutable signs. And so they've begun this square with Neptune. And we're going to start to feel that fade, thankfully. But it will be a process. The murkiness, the peak of the murkiness is the 26th. And there can be a lot of confusion about fact. And with this aspect to the true node, Neptune has been amplified. It has been exaggerated. It is one of the dominant energies going on in the background where we just feel a little bit confused about what's true and what's not, and also the direction we're going. So if you feel at the moment like you've just had this period of confusion surrounding where you're going in life or what's true and what's not in the world, and certainly, as I say, this has played out on a world stage with all the different conspiracy theories and things and false information, and also not having information, if you felt that doubt and that confusion, that is because this aspect has been leading up to it, and it is something that will start to fade away as the two separate. There's an interesting thing about this, though, that I want to talk about, especially as somebody who's interested in astrology and tarot as much as I am and has built this channel on it. Neptune in Pisces was always going to be a huge trend in the world for spirituality. And with it has come a lot of gurus, has come a lot of people on the internet giving spiritual advice. And I think that's wonderful in many ways, because a lot of the times we get comfort on our journey through other people's experiences and through getting information, right? You know, there is somewhat of a difference reading a book and finding it very helpful and life-changing, and then someone doing a video on the internet about the similar topic. You know, it's the information source that's fundamentally different. And I do believe that astrology and tarot, a lot of it has a place in your healing journey, if that's what you're doing, you know, your spiritual journey, particularly those going through a dark night of the soul. And while this is a wonderful thing, with Neptune, anything that is wonderful, anything that is hopeful, anything that has a bit of escapism can be misused. That's the dark side of Neptune. And so a lot of people have become reliant rather than actually going through a spiritual journey. It's not a spiritual journey if you're reliant on somebody else for direction on how to live your life. Most good spiritual gurus, as we call them, will be able to explain to you that the true movement and the true manifestation power, all of it comes from you. All of it comes from looking within. It will always be a personal journey, and to an extent it will always be a bit of a lonely journey. And if you're masking over your pain or your discomfort in reality with pick of cards to find out when you're going to meet your soulmate or when you're going to be famous or whatever it is, you're just plastering over something. You're not actually having a spiritual journey. If you're using them along the way because you feel guided to, sure, that's amazing, that's brilliant. Some of them are absolutely phenomenal. But where is it sacrificing yourself for some information that temporarily makes you feel better? You know, Neptune's also associated with the victim mentality, where we feel like we're helpless. We're not helpless. We have a lot of power within us, and it would be a shame to undergo some kind of spiritual journey or journey to awareness and sacrifice our own personal power for something that is temporary. Because what is temporary in a spiritual journey, whether it's a reassurance in a temporary moment, is an awful sacrifice when you could be getting that true fulfillment and that true power from within you. So Neptune can do that. It can show us where we have started to escape things. And especially it can show us where we've really escaped certain facts. You know, I remember getting this book on birthdays when I was about 11. I think I was maybe like 11. And for my birthday, I remember that the quote, every birthday had a quote. And it said, "Seek first what is directly before you." And it didn't make sense at the time because I was 11 and I was looking around the room and thinking, well, there's a sofa, there's a TV. What does it mean? You know, it's actually more to do with not getting lost. Everything that is spiritual we associate, right, with the third eye and the crown chakra and being psychic and being intuitive and all these different things, interpreting the stars. There is the other side of this. There's the root chakra. There's the groundedness. When we don't feel grounded, we get dizzy and we get lost in those realms and we miss life. We miss the moment. We miss being in the moment. We miss the opportunities that we're probably trying to manifest, that we're hoping for. You know, seek first what is directly before you. The true node always shows us the direction we should be going. And in Gemini, that is your immediate environment. It's your neighborhood. It's your siblings. It's your conversations. It's the voice that you have yourself. And it's facts. The South Node, by contrast, which is what we're kind of moving away from, is more the religious perspective, the ideology, the philosophy, and getting so lost there as we sometimes do. We certainly got lost there when Jupiter was in Sagittarius back in 2018 and much of 2019. We certainly got lost there. Now that the South Node is there, it's saying, you know, couldn't you move away from trying to escape your life by taking a vacation to a different country every weekend or every couple of months because you're just trying to get away from something rather than appreciate the culture, or you're just trying to show it on Instagram rather than actually be in the moment? This is just simply asking you to be in the moment. And it's saying that, yes, every spiritual practice, every astrologer, every tarot reader has, you know, something to offer, yeah, but it's not something for you to become reliant on. It's not something for you to get lost in. And so with this aspect, it's just asking yourself, you know, what is your relationship with spirituality? Because it might actually be a little bit unhealthy. Not every spiritual journey is completely a positive experience. And sometimes, you know, we can really confuse our experience with our idols. And it's just about checking into the moment, checking in where you are, and checking in how you feel. And yeah, we probably won't know for a little while what exactly is real and what's not. But it's important that you're starting to establish your truth and figure out what you think. With the True Node in Gemini, a lot of it is bringing us back to our communities, you know, where we are, feeling connected to our neighborhoods, to our environment, and also connected to many different things to learn. There are many things that we can learn about in life that might not necessarily seem to be completely spiritually based or completely have meaning, but everything has the meaning that you attach to it. So it's just asking you to look a little closer to home than looking so far from yourself for your answers. And then over the next couple of months, you'll start to feel a bit more clarity about that, which will be lovely. So, other things going on this week. We have Mercury retrograde in Aquarius on the 30th. Now, this is the first Mercury retrograde of 2021. And in Aquarius, we're going to be really kind of confused. I was thinking about this, and I think I mentioned it in my last podcast, but last year, whenever the pandemic was started, I remember when Mercury was in Aquarius, we were kind of getting these glimpses into the future. And so Mercury retrograde in Aquarius makes me think, oh, it's like back to the future, going back to what we had seen before, but have kind of got lost at the moment. And certainly with Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, there will be a lot of evaluation. There'll be a lot of reconsideration about the humanitarian aspects and impacts in life, and equality is going to be a big theme with this particular transit. You know, the way that we think about the future is different now. We don't have much certainty. We don't understand entirely what platform we're working with. And Aquarius is the sign that represents the future. So to have a retrograde there, and bear in mind, Mercury is pretty okay in Aquarius, I think. It's a great time for technology. And so when it's retrograde, it's likely that we could actually revisit something in terms of technology, or it's likely that we can, someone somewhere is financing the next big invention. I can just feel it with the Aquarian stellium coming up in February. But for us on a personal level, Mercury retrograde in Aquarius is reevaluating our relationship with the future. So what I mean by that is, when you think about the future, when you're anticipating what it might look like for you, or how certain you feel about it, and chances are at the moment you maybe don't feel that certainty at all. You feel like something's coming. You feel like something's changing, and you feel like things are about to open up. If you're feeling that way, you're likely probably correct. But how comfortable do you feel about the fact that it's not set in stone? Do you feel insecure about that? Do you feel insecure that you don't know what you're working with? Or do you feel kind of excited, kind of empowered, kind of ready to try something new, try to play in a new arena, to play in a new field? Because with Aquarius energy, everything's actually kind of evening out. it feels like it's moving towards a more even playing field. Now, that's not to say that we're out of the Capricorn energy completely, because Venus is conjunct Pluto in Capricorn this week as well. In fact, it's conjunct 25 degrees of Capricorn on the 28th. Now, what does this mean for everybody? Well, it's an intense energy surrounding relationships, but it's also a tense relationship surrounding money and surrounding those in power. The conjunction of Capricorn feels reminiscent of 2020, and it is, with Pluto in the mix, it's quite transformative. So this can transform many relationships in a big way. It can transform a lot of dynamics in a way that's different. It can generate a lot of change for people. And it can certainly make you feel more intense about how you love, but also your money. It amplifies those feelings. It's an intense, powerful energy. But the thing that we misunderstand so much with Pluto is that Pluto has literally, and I mean literally, if you look up pictures of Pluto literally has the biggest heart. And so when Pluto is connecting with Venus, as it does every year, it's about examining how big our heart is. And in a huge way as well, it's about how much we love what we do. Capricorn is a sign very associated with hierarchy and progressing and moving up in business and being successful, and our relationship with how the world sees us. And a lot of the time when this comes up, people are really thrown into this feeling of, do I love what I do or not? Do I love how I'm changing? Do I love how my career is changing, or what my life path is, or do I feel love there? The dark side of Capricorn is that sometimes we can instead feel more connected to the love of money rather than the love of what we do. And if money is something that comes through once a month, loving it doesn't feel so sincere. It feels more conditional. Venus and Capricorn conjunct Pluto, there's kind of a reassessment going of how much you love what you do, how much you love money, but how much you love anything. And it's whether it's conditional or not, or whether it constantly has to be moving to a new goal. Again, a lot of this week, I think, asks us to come back to the moment. Especially that Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. It's bringing us back to the moment instead of feeling completely anxious about the future. Because a lot of people at the moment are more anxious about the future than they're stuck in the past. If anybody feels stuck in the present, that's actually wonderful, because it gives you an ample opportunity to work with the moment that you're in and work with your perception of the moment. The other thing, and last but certainly not least, of course, is the Leo full moon. Now, I do have a video up on this going into what it means for each signs if you want to look at that, if you haven't already. But the full moon in Leo, there's an element to this where people will always say, when it's a Leo full moon, it's like, roar, step into the spotlight. As I said with the sun aspect in Chiron, there is an element of that, but there's also a building energy of Aquarius, which is everyone outside of ourselves and realizing that there's a collective. And yes, the Leo energy is very much to do with self-love and leading from the heart and being on the stage and how much we feel creative and how much we feel powerful and how much we feel courageous. But the squares around this, the Sun square Uranus on the 26th, the squares between Aquarius and Taurus, the fixed sign energy, is really pushing our buttons in terms of security. It's really pushing our buttons in how we feel around people, how we feel without people, how we feel secure or not. And I don't feel that with Mars and Uranus both in Taurus that we feel secure. The more that Mars moves away from Uranus, we'll start to feel a sense of security coming back, because Mars in Taurus is actually a very secure element in its way. But the Uranian effect, Mercury retrograde, the Uranian effect is very unsettling for those who like routine, for those who like feeling safe. But if you could just lean this week with the uncertainty and realize that things have never actually been so certain anyway. And yes, the world's climate at the moment looks more unsettled than ever before. But when you think about that, and when you have your perception, if your perception of the world is making you anxious or it's making you fearful, just remember that Neptune square the true node is creating this illusion, it's creating this fear, it's creating this narrative that might not necessarily be true. And the facts that we believe to be true might not necessarily be true. One of the interesting things about that aspect that I was thinking of is that oftentimes you could be in your bedroom, you could be completely safe, you could be completely content, things could be good. And you could get up your phone and you could go on to the news and you could see these awful things happening in another country, and you can watch the videos of it and you can read the tweets of it and you can see all this stuff, and you are there in your mind, but you're not actually there. That's the difference between Neptune and the true node. You're there, you're in the illusion of it, you can feel it, you can feel the pain, but you're not there. And that's not to say you should ignore the suffering in the world or you should ignore the world around you, but I'm making the point that sometimes where we are in our head can be fundamentally very different to where we are in reality. And this week is really asking you to check back in with the current moment and see if you're, one, engaged with the current moment or you're constantly on to the next thing. And also to assess, just, do you feel overwhelmingly concerned about the future, or do you have a little bit of hope attached? There's a lot of reevaluation about what time frame you're living in and how good you feel there. And so when the Leo full moon comes up and it wants us to be a little bit playful, it can also be really dramatic. And that's where you have to pull it back and say, I'm here in the moment. I am in this environment and this is happening with me. And go from there.